Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Greetings and salutations, and thank you for spending some of your time with me. My name is Reverend Phoenix Coffin Williams. I am the first priest of the Corellian tradition, and this is another little ditty that I have been calling Fridays with Phoenix. For those of y'all who have been watching, we have been diving into a little bit of discussion or understanding about the cosmos, the nature of existence, the soul, and work as it pertains to other spiritual entities, specifically those that are known as demons. And I did want to have a long, multiple week, maybe even multiple month discussion about this because it's a very complex situation. And a lot more goes into the discussion of spirit work than usually happens in pop culture, paganism, or in other discussions of the work. Not to mention the impact of cultural worldviews on the understanding of demons and demonization further complicates how we can understand these ideologies and entities. And then also syncretization, blending, fear mongering, and sensationalism related to Hollywood, and even some books that are written really do obscure the practice of exorcism and managing spiritual identity. So we have been talking about that for the past several months. And last week, I talked about a classification of entity known as monitoring spirits. Hello, SWAC fan 2791. Thank you for reaching out in the chat. Always good to see you. And so, again, for those who are watching who might be new to discussion, wherever it is that you're watching from, Facebook, Discord, YouTube, whatever, you can use the chat function and you can interact with me directly. And I will answer any questions that I am able to and bring your comments into the live discussion. So thank you for that reminder, Slack fan, who is watching from YouTube. So last week I spoke about monitoring spirits and what their function is, and I asked some questions for contemplation. And the questions for contemplation are important. Every question that I, as a high priest, as an instructor or a teacher, every question that I ask is meant to have a particular impact on your understanding, and it's your answer. So when I ask you a question, usually there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's really meant to get you to contemplate and to solidify what it is that you actually think and believe. And knowing what it is that you actually think and believe is a very important skill. Um, when it comes to all kinds of magical work and all kinds of metaphysical work, being very, very clear on what you think, what you believe, and how you experience things is very important. When it comes to working with entities, when it comes to working with spiritual energies, and this is all across the board. If it's our ancestors, if it's our spirit guides, if it's the gods, if it's the archangels, if it's the devas, if it's the demons. When it comes to working with them, you have to have a very clear understanding and idea about what is reality, about what are your values, about what you believe and about what you think. Because when it comes to interacting with any of these spiritual entities, most of, if not all of the interactions will be happening in a mental, emotional kind of mood kind of situation. How do you know when your favorite ancestor is upon you? What happens to your mood? What happens to your energetic body? What happens to your thoughts? What happens to the things that you can smell? If you've been practicing your mediumship skills, then learning how to discern when certain kind of spiritual energies is upon you is the first thing that you want to learn how to do after recognizing yourself as a spirit, of course. But knowing this and knowing these things is going to absolutely be essential. When it comes to our cosmos and how we experience things, it's important to understand, again, not only the 7 planes of existence, the physical, the astral, the mental, the emotional, the solar, the monadic, the divine, these kind of planes. It's important to know them, but it's also important to know or understand the laws that govern each of these planes. So in the physical realm, physics is probably going to be the thing. It's going to be the laws, and we recognize gravity, and we recognize inertia, and we recognize friction. And we recognize heat, and we recognize cold, and we recognize like those kinds of things as the laws of the physical plane. Above us is the astral plane, and the things that make up the astral plane, the substance that makes up the astral plane, is different than the substances that make up the physical plane. And the astral plane is highly receptive to our thoughts. The things that we think can very, very easily and very, very quickly manifest in the astral plane. So essential is the astral plane that everything that manifests at all ever manifests there first. So everything that has a home in the physical world has a home in the astral world. Caveat, not everything that has a form in the astral realm will come to have a form in the physical realm. It takes tremendous amounts of energy for things to be astral emanations and then to be manifested and brought forth into the physical. So, for example, think about how much energy it takes for 2 people, mom and dad, to be like, oh, our precious baby exists in the heavens somewhere. That's a fact. Their precious baby does exist in the astral plane somewhere. How much energy is it going to take for them to get that baby? All of the energy that it takes for them to get together, incubate the child, and pass it out through labor. That's the same kind of thing that you want to think about when it comes to things manifesting from the astral to the physical. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to make something move from the astral to the physical. Likewise, it takes a tremendous amount of energy for something to move from the higher upmost divine plane all the way down to the physical. Some things just stop on the astral, and that's where their manifestation is. Some things just stop on the emotional, and that's just where their manifestation is. Some just stop on the solar plane, and that's just where their manifestation is. However, everything that exists in the physical plane has manifested in all of the other simultaneous planes of existence first. Think about that when it comes to your relationship with demons and those other maybe darker entities, because also, like, calling them darker entities is just our human judgment. It doesn't have anything to do with what they actually are. A lot of times people think about demons as being down in a hellscape somewhere. Well, unfortunately, that hellscape only exists in our little pocket imagination. Because when it comes to divinity, all things serve a purpose. And just because our egos or our interactions with the veil obscure the purpose and how it benefits the divine plan, doesn't mean that demons do not benefit the divine plan and do not exist exactly as they are supposed to, doing exactly what they are meant to do. And part of the work of exorcism, part of the work of restoring spiritual balance is recognizing that, yes, even the demons serve a purpose in the grand scheme of things, in the divine plan, and restoring balance to that is the goal. So that is One of the things that I want everybody to think about moving forward as you work on reconceptualizing exorcism and work with demons. We are not trying to vanquish anything. We are not trying to banish anything into another plane of existence. When we come as the witch, as the priestess, as the priest, as the what have you, we are coming in when the demonic entities are there, when the angelic entities are there, when the earthbound entities are there, and they need a body to work on their what have you. We step in to restore that spiritual balance, not to destroy anything. Because as people with metaphysical understanding, we recognize that things don't actually get destroyed. Their energy gets reutilized for another part of the divine plan. And when it comes to working with demons, we are restoring that balance so that every part of the divine plan is continuing to work as it needs to. Last time I talked about monitoring spirits, and I suggested that monitoring spirits are spirits that watch you, gather information about you, follow you around, and use that information for some purpose, for their own purpose, without actually giving anything back to you. And I talked about real world manifestations of monitoring spirits. Think about those people who watch you on social media, who look at all your stuff, but who won't like or subscribe or comment or say anything nice or affirmative. Like, that's an example of a monitoring spirit. Even if they were to launch a critique, that would still be some kind of an energetic output on their behalf. So even if someone comes in, watches, and they, act like they're a hater, act like they have a critique for you, even that is an energetic exchange. That is not what monitoring spirits do. They only watch you, they gather the information about you, and they use it for themselves. And they do not offer you anything in return. In the spirit world, a monitoring spirit might be a type of imp. It might be a thought form that was sent to you by another witch. It could be an ancestor who's watching you and who's reporting back to other ancestors about how well the lessons are going, um, or how well you're progressing in your spiritual development. Hey, Black Crystal 615, how you doing? Thank you for coming in and watching from YouTube. But aside from that, the interaction between our third eye, our thoughts, our beliefs, and the astral realm has done a lot to obscure what we know or what we think we know about demons and working with demonology. Historically speaking, the book of demonology, spelled with an IE, was written by the same King James who wrote the Bible. And there are some rumors, some hints, some reports that perhaps this King James might have had some psychosis. Maybe it was full on schizophrenia. Maybe it's something that we would have come to call schizophreniform or schizotypal or schizoid. But either way, he had a stint with psychosis, and or so it's reported. And when you have a stint with psychosis, one of the scariest things is that those who struggle with, suffer with, or who are blessed with an experience with psychosis do not share the same reality with the people around them. Their reality might not be consistent with any other reality that exists. It could be an individual reality created just for them by their own brain, by their own mind. And when that is the case, the things that they are experiencing do not apply to everybody else. So maybe right now I would posit that if King James did have some psychosis and his brain and his mind did warp his reality, then all of the demons that he saw were for him and him alone to tend with. They were emanations of his own shadow that perhaps had a lot to do with some of the stuff that he was doing as an elite person. As we know, the elite are not that great at doing the moral or upright things. So maybe all of the demons that King James was thinking about were shadow manifestations or emanations of his own guilt, shame, fear, um, for things related to who he was and what he had done, or what he was doing, or what he would come to do. That collective unconscious piece and that personal unconscious piece, they dove, and those are, Jungian and Freudian terms. They dovetail together to create experiences for us. All of that is not to say that demons do not exist. What I wanted to point out is that the ones that fuel our media, the ones that fuel our imaginations, very well could just be thought forms that were created by a psychotic king who had enough power, authority, and influence to really codify his personal thought forms into the minds of his kingdom, creating hysteria and panic. Maybe even a type of folie à deux that the entire, monarchy fell victim to as a result of King James's psychosis. Who knows? Hello, Acid Fox 52. Greetings, greetings. Additionally, maybe the inspiration for King James's demons came from the history of pagan gods that he had become aware of, and through a little political mumbo jumbo and psychosis, which could include, like, if not hallucinations, what's the word I'm looking for? Hello, Charnette. Delusions, and paranoia could have been a part of King James's psychosis, and he became really out of touch with the reality, very, very afraid. And what did he become afraid of? A resurgence of pagan gods. Who knows? But it's important to recognize that because this hysteria brought on by King James, which impacted witches as well, and very real human beings who were harmed because of this. But due to this, right, we can very clearly see that the interaction between our third eye and the reality that we build, our fears and the third eye and the reality that we build, is a very, 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 very close connection. And so going around teaching everybody that there is a pocket dimension called hell has obviously led to the creation of a pocket dimension called hell, specifically for the people who believe in it. Because everything exists in our minds. So, don't believe in a hell? No pocket dimension called hell. Cultures everywhere talked about afterlives that had little pocket dimensions in them that were for the better or for the worse of those who had lived a certain life. And of course, in Egypt, like, if you was really, really a piece of shit, then they fed your soul to like the hippo alligator thingy, and like your soul was devoured. No more like afterlife for you. Ooh, Charnette, thank you for bringing up the Gnostic texts. Thank you for keeping it real and keeping it live. All of that to say that for very many people, the idea of vanquishing demons became a fantasy and became a little pocket reality in the astral realm by a bunch of Charmed fans. Having to stake vampires and having to, tussle with the forces of darkness in that kind of way became an entire perception for a lot of people who fell in love with Buffy and Angel. And I'm absolutely saying that the things that we think of have an impact on our world, to the point that there were a group of people out there back in the day who did walk around with stakes and they were trying to hunt vampires. There are groups of people who have formed covens of witches who believe themselves to be vanquishing demons. There are people who style themselves after Sam and Dean Winchester, and like that show did a lot to activate the imaginations and minds of magically inclined people. And the fact that it was media and sensationalized means that there's a lot of misinformation that was based on or inspired by reality. And so the belief, the thought, the function of demons or any spiritual entities is remarkably obscured, and some of it even starts to pop up and fizzle in the astral plane when you add to it some energy. So, Lord forbid, there's a bunch of new age folks who fell in love with the Winchesters who started doing magic in Enochian because they saw seasons 1 through 6 of Supernatural, and they don't have the whole backdrop of the Enochian system or the watchtowers or the fallen angels or what have you. They're now actually practicing magic. And in their thoughts and in their third eyes, they are creating realities through the power of their third eye in the astral realm. And the more energy that gets put into it, the more the thought form grows, the more it spreads. And now you have so much misinformation, so much misunderstanding, so much that you have to wade through before you get to the actual truth. And that is what the astral plane is completely formed out of. Every single thought, imagination, inspiration, spark of creation ever that could be or will be is in the astral. And it is this light, substance, smoky, what have you, that gives it its form. And as soon as you have a thought, there's a wisp of astral smoke that is right there that makes the template for it to be a thing. Again, all of that to say that some of the demons that people think they are tussling with are actually just thought forms that were created by their own imagination, powered by their own fears, anxieties, and worries, and then pushed into physical existence by that power. And so, with that being the case, when you think about a self fulfilling prophecy that's based on anxiety, that's basically it. You created a thought demon for yourself to conquer yourself. You worried about it enough to push it into physical existence, and now you have to contend with it. So, how would you, as a magical practitioner, as someone who knows about the interactions between our thoughts and our feelings and the astral plane, as someone who knows that automatic negative thoughts exist, as someone who knows that insecurities exist, as someone who knows that the shadows exist, how would you discern between the difference between a demon and a thought form that has been empowered by someone's shadow and trauma? I will want to leave all of you with that question for now. And then when we pick back up next week, maybe we'll start there. And maybe we'll talk about another plane of existence above the astral plane as we continue to illuminate the fact that all of the things that are in existence exist in the divine mind of the creator, and all of it serve a purpose, even the demons. Charnette, yes, I can send some information on my page so that we can connect. Faux show, faux show. Until next week, I pray that everyone experiences some divine blessings in accordance with what you truly deserve. And I hope that you are all uplifted and elevated by what you receive. Love you lots, and blessed be.